Hey there everybody, this is Patrick from Lost in Games, and today we are going to be talking about the Battle of the Bulge. So Compass Games has a couple of games related to that battle, and one of them is Bitter Woods, which is kind of a classic hex encounter war game, very well known, very competitively gamed for quite some time. This is part of their designer series. I believe it's probably somewhere between medium and the upper end of medium on the complexity. I haven't played this yet. We also have Ardennes, Battle of the Bulge, the first in their enemy action series. And this is by John Butterfield. And both of these games, I'm sure, cover the Battle of the Bulge in incredible detail and are good games. I'm kind of funny when it comes to war games, especially as you start moving into the more complicated rule sets. I'll buy these war games and I'll take a look at them and I'll get a little overwhelmed by them, and they sit on my shelf, and then over the next course of a year or maybe two, I'll get it out occasionally and read and reread the rules, and then finally I'll be like, okay, I'm going to dive in and I'm going to figure the game out. So with both of these games, I purchased both of them within the last year, and I haven't played either of them yet. Their complexity has been a little worrisome for me. I definitely will play them when the time comes, because I believe they're somewhere around the upper end of medium complexity, but I don't know yet, so I can't really confirm. But Compass Games in the last year also had a Kickstarter and a pre-order for another Battle of the Bulge game, also by John Butterfield, who made this title, and it is called Battle of the Bulge, World War II Commander. And this is volume 1 of this new series. So I pre-ordered this one kind of on a whim. I had both of these sitting on my shelf. This one looked like it was a little bit more accessible, and I thought, you know what, I'll give this one a try, and then if I'm feeling pretty good, I'm going to allow myself to evolve into the more complex rule sets. So this came and landed on my doorstep a couple of months ago, and I actually didn't get around to opening it for around a month after that. And when I did, I was incredibly happy with what I found, because this is almost a perfect game. And I don't say that very often. There are okay games, there are good games, there are great games, there are awesome games, and then there are ones that are just kind of hovering near the top of that awesome, which you just can't even believe that it all came together in such a wonderful way. That is this game. So we're going to take a look at this game. Like I said, this is by John Butterfield, and now that he has done this, I'm actually really excited to check out the Ardennes box set. But why don't we I'm going to take a little extra time on the overview portion of this video, because I really want you to get a feel for what this game is and what it is not. It's very different than any other war game that I have played. I believe it is based on a video game or a computer game. I might be wrong there, but I believe that's where this original idea came from. So let's take a moment and let's do an in-depth look at the Battle of the Bulge by Compass Games. Okay, so here we have the game set up for Battle of the Bulge by Compass Games. This is an extremely elegant game design, and it is one of those rare situations where the production values and the design decisions, not just in the rules, but also on the board with the different materials, where everything comes together into, I almost want to say, perfection. It is extremely elegant. Compass Games, John Butterfield, they've gone to great lengths to build a game that has everything you need in front of it. I know that sounds silly. Every board game's supposed to do that, but rarely does a game achieve it like Battle of the Bulge does. Especially, I hate to say this, but war games can be very difficult to get into, very difficult to understand the rules. There can be a lot of information in a lot of different places. Some of it makes sense to have it on board, some of it makes sense to have it on play aids. In this particular case, Everything you see has been meticulously designed to provide value to every single aspect of gameplay. And I have to tell you, it is absolutely astounding. I only found like the tiniest little nitpick, and I can't say that of any board game. This is astounding from the beginning to the end. It is designed to help you set up very quickly and efficiently. It is designed to help you play as smoothly as possible, containing all of the rules that you really care about, obviously, in a play aid in the sequence of play. And they provide some for that, but also just the game board itself. And we're going to take a closer look at the different sections of the game board and the different setup areas in a moment, as I kind of give you a brief overview of the game. But it is one of the smartest, tightest game designs I have ever seen. And I am nothing but not impressed. So let's take a closer look at some of the different areas and different of the design, and I can kind of show you what I mean. Okay? Looking at the game map itself, it has the map area, which is divided into regions or zones that you will be moving units to. Obviously, this is not a hex encounter. This is move your units into the different zones. Across the top here, you have the calendar, as the Battle of the Bulge lasted from December 16th to December 28th. So as you play this game, you will make your way through the different days. And every day, there are special events that happen that tie in with history. Every day, there are different levels of reinforcements that you can get, and every day there are different levels of victory conditions. So it's entirely possible, if the Germans do extremely well, they could end the game in 4 days. On the other hand, it could last all the way to December 28th, much like history did. So here is your day tracker, and there also is a tracker for the 3 surprise turns that the Germans get, because they're basically going to get 3 free turns at the beginning of the game to represent those elite panzer units storming into the Battle of the Bulge and slamming into the Allied troops, who are under-equipped and not quite ready for the onslaught that is about to hit them. So they get their free turns, and then you will look down here, and here every day you have a time tracker. And this time tracker starts at 0530, goes to 0700, goes to 0830. Every other box here is a turn for the other player. So at 0530, it'll start, and the German player will get a turn. Then the Allied player will get a turn. Then a German, then an Allied, then a German, etc. And you'll make your way all the way through till you hit the end of the time tracker. Now, what makes this kind of cool is for the first half of the game. So in the first setup of days, the German's going to get 2 turns right away up front, and then it starts going every other. And then at the end of the day, the Allies will get 2. But as you make your way through the days, at some point, the Allies are going to start getting reinforcements coming onto the map, and this is where the tide can begin to turn, in which case the Allies become the initiative player, and they'll get their first 2 turns, alternate, and then they'll get to the 2 turns for the Germans at the end. So you can imagine there's a point in the game where there's Ally, Axis, Ally, Ally, and then the initiative switches, Ally, Ally. There's a point where the Allies are going to get like four actions right in a row, and it really represents the tide of history beginning to shift towards the Allies as the reinforcements are arriving, the greater numbers, they have goods, they have supply coming in, and this is where the Germans really start to begin to struggle in the game, because they start having fuel shortages, and they start having things like that, which really affect their ability to advance. So it is absolutely critical in the early stages of the game for the Germans to strike hard, strike fast, no mercy, sir, right? That's what they are supposed to do. And if they are not aggressive and successful enough by the midpoint of the game, it is an extreme uphill battle for them to succeed. So you also have a terrain key up in the corner, which talks about the different terrain, the different modifiers, etc. Across the top here, you have a victory point condition, and rather than track Allied and victory points, this game just tracks German victory points. And so as it increases, as the Germans get points, it'll go up. As the Allies get points, it'll go down. And every single day, you'll be able to look at that day, like for example, December 20th. If on December 20th, the Germans have 12 victory points, they're going to win the game. If on December 20th, the Allied can have have it reduced down to 4 victory points, they will win the game. So you have shifting victory conditions, you have shifting terrain, you have shifting things happening throughout the game. It's not a straightforward game. You are never certain with this game, which in my opinion really does recreate the craziness that was the Battle of the Bulge. This game also has a lot of interesting things. It has a US hit chart here and it has a German hit chart. So when combat happens and the two units are clashing, as you are rolling dice, you'll start scoring the hits, right? And you can keep track of it as they go up and down based on the modifiers and your dice rolls, etc., until you can actually resolve the battle. So it's a nice, clever way to kind of keep track of the hits as they're piling up and they're removing. If you look at the board itself, they are regions divided by boundaries, and we'll take a closer look at those in a second. You'll see these counters, and these counters represent control. So if you see this counter, that means Germans are in control of that region. If you don't see a counter on the map, that means that the Allies have control. So after a battle, if the Germans here wipe out this Allied unit, they would have control. And if the Allies then move a unit in to battle in that region, until they actually defeat the Germans technically still have control of that region. And that is an important part of the battle sequence. So we'll come back to that in a little bit. So after a battle has occurred, what's really nice is they give you these little things, and if this battle has already been fought, you just put that on there. That unit has already been activated for this turn, and it cannot fight again for this day, right? So basically, units will be able to fight twice. They'll be able to fight if they are attacking, and they will also be able to fight if they are attacked. But once they have actually engaged in that action, you put that unit marker on there and it lets everybody know. And then at the end of the day, you just take all those off and you have a brand new day for brand new operations, etc. Okay, so I want to take a closer look at the counters here for a moment. But first I want to actually focus in on the Allied order of battle. So when you set up the game, you have counters, and these counters obviously represent the Allies or the German forces. And they will be assigned, there are a set of counters. The initial forces are going to be assigned to the game board. So how this works is you have these order of battle cards, which actually lay out, it really makes it easy to set up. They actually lay out every single unit, okay, that you're going to have. So at the beginning of the game, all you really have to do is put all of the units on this board and match them up, okay? And then if you'll look, every unit has a value, and then as they start taking damage, you're going to flip it, and then it will be replaced if it takes more damage as it slowly is reduced to extinction on the board. Okay, so some units only are very weak units. They may just start the board and that's all you got, right? That happens to be the case with some of the Allied units. But there are other units that come in blazing strong on the board, or will come in blazing strong as reinforcements. And so you will take the top counter and you will place it on the board in the region. And then as it begins to take damage, you're going to flip that counter on the board. And then as it takes more damage, you will replace it with the next weaker version of itself. This is really slick and really nice. It really allows your units to have several levels of strength and power. Another nice thing about how this is lined up is you have your initial forces in the top block. So you can see here that all of these that don't have counters, this is the starting conditions for units on the board. Everything that you see on here that has counters on it in the initial forces, those are the more powerful forces that are on the board, because they can take some hits on the board and slowly be reduced into those. And then every day you have reinforcements that will arrive in the game. And the reinforcements, it tells you exactly when they start. So December 18th, you're going to see this unit show up in the game, and on the counter itself it tells you exactly where. It says 18 because of December 18th, that's when it joins the game. And then B is you're going to look at the game board, and there are letters on it, which I'll show you in a moment, that will actually tell you you can pick one of the zones where that letter is to bring those units in on the board in those locations. So everything is right here on the order of battle. All of the units are here, and there's a lot of different counters, because you not only have the main counter that's going to be on the board, but you have all of the levels of damage that you have there. And so every single counter has a unit symbol in the corner, which makes it very easy for you to sort and organize them. If you know what you're doing and you've done this a couple of times, it'll take you between 15 and 30 minutes tops to set up this game board and get into the game, which, as you know, for a war game is quite an endeavor. Most war games, you spend a couple hours getting them all set up and just getting ready to play. So this is a game you can set up very, very quickly. So the Germans have an order of battle, the Allies have an order of battle, and I'm going to take a quick look at the Allied order of battle right now. Okay, so I just want to take a moment and show you, here's the Allied version. So as you can see on the German version, they had 3 rows of forces that are storming into the Bulge. Here, the Allies only have 2 rows, but they have a lot more reinforcements that are going to come throughout the game. So obviously, representing history, if you see, the Allies have the green counters, which are the American forces, and then there are the British counters that you see right here, which can come into the game under the right circumstances as well. So really, like I described, up front, the Germans are going to come in and be a storm of steel as they slam into the region, and the Allies have to really survive the initial hit. So in a strange way, this is kind of a lot like an Eastern Front game, right, where the Germans show up and kind of kick the biscuits out of the enemy, but then at some point the Russians start really kind of becoming an engine that is almost impossible for the Germans to hold back. So it's got that nice ebb and flow. Both sides get their moments of glory. Both sides have moments where they're on the offensive. Both sides have moments where, uh-oh, my plans aren't working out. Keeping an eye on the shifting conditions of the game will help you decide, what do I need to do? How can I end this game early, get the victory points I need? And we'll talk about that in a minute as well. So next thing I want to do is I want to switch and show you the game pieces right now. And I'm going to pop that up onto the screen so that you can see it. So in the upper left-hand corner, you see the historical insignia. Not necessary, but one of those just little bitty nice touches that makes the game so perfect. In that when you pour out all of those counters, you can easily group them by the insignia and easily find their place on the order of battle. You can see the unit type. There's usually 3 pictures there: armor, mechanized infantry, or infantry. In the lower left hand, you can see the strength. That is how many die that you will roll when you are making your attack. And next to it, if you see a little box with a plus symbol, that is an additional die that you will add to the attack, meaning that unit is particularly awesome. In the lower right-hand side, you can see that is the hit chance. Now, most units have a hit chance of black, with a black background, and you will go ahead and you will roll that. And if you roll, so for example, you see the 4 there, if you roll a 1, 2, 3, or 4, you're going to score a hit, okay? Some units, though, however, are elite, and elite have a higher chance when they are attacking, but they still have that other marker there, like you see there, and that is for when they are defending, right? So that means they're definitely better in the offense, but they're standard on the defense. If you look above that on the right side, you will see the starting space, and that is, right, a letter. And the number there, you see the 23, that means the 23rd day. So on the 23rd day, this particular unit, which is right above it, the 2nd Armored Division, right, is going to show up on the map in space F on the 23rd. So these counters are great. Everything is right there. If you reduce, you'll flip that over. You would see the strength go down by 1 as they take a hit, and you will see that the unit gets weaker and weaker the more hits that it takes. So obviously units that have 6, big armored, powerful armored units like that, they have they can take a lot of damage and deal a lot of damage. But, you know, there are units out there that have a 1. They start off with a 1 or 2, which means that they can't take much. They can't take much of a battering. And so you're going to see right away a lot of the weaker units drop off the map, and you're going to find yourself cheering when you can bring on those really powerful units that are part of your reinforcements. So let's go ahead now and take a closer look at an actual game space so that you can see what it looks like and how that works. Okay, so here is a glimpse of multiple spaces, and we'll kind of take a look at each of them just so that you can see kind of a nice variety. Every space has a boundary, could be a gray line, could be a river, etc. These reddish lines are roads. So obviously there is a strategic move in this game, so you can quickly move units if you have nothing in your way, which is nice. So you can do a standard movement, you can also do a strategic movement. But in a space, it has a boundary. Crossing a boundary is just you spending one of your movement points. Crossing a river, there are some special rules that make it easier or more difficult to cross rivers. I can tell you as the German, that can be very annoying when you kind of gather up your forces to kind of slam into another space and you're like, I gotta get across that river now, which is awesome because that's very realistic as to the challenges that they particularly had to face. So every region has a name that you can see laid out there. Regions also may have this symbol, which indicates that if a German unit is in control of this symbol, of this particular region, they are going to get a victory point for it. But it also means if they ever lose control of that region, they are going to lose a victory point as well. There's some other symbols in there. If you see this symbol right here, this is the artillery symbol. And what that means is every symbol on the map that has an artillery symbol like that is within range of German artillery. And that means they get additional bonuses to their combat checks because they basically get to blow the crap out of the enemy and then go in there and fight, right? It's all handled in that one dice roll. You get one dice roll for attack and for defense, and we'll go through that in a moment as well. But just note, so you can see right here is that boundary of German artillery. So on this side, Germans are even, not only do they have more units, but they also have their artillery supporting them. Once they kind of cross this line and make their way deeper into the map, you're going to see there are no artillery symbols, which again makes their task much harder to achieve the goals they need to get the victory points that they want to get. So you'll also see these little markers here that show a modifier, and that is a modifier for the defender's role in combat. So for example, if I have this unit in this particular spot and we see the German unit cross this river and go into battle right here, you can go ahead and see that this unit is defending. It is an allied space and it's defending, so there's a -2 right to the attacker's roll. So who is attacking and defending is important. Who is in control of a space is important, and we'll talk about that in a moment when we go over combat. The other thing that you can see, and I'm just going to slide the board a little bit here, we did talk about reinforcement spaces. So if you look here, here are these letters alongside the board that you can see. That's an example when reinforcements come in. If a reinforcement comes in an area C, that means you can bring the reinforcements in there. If there's multiple areas marked C, that means you get to pick which spot you want to bring reinforcements in. Now there is a clever little mechanic because there's a stacking limit to units in the game. There's a clever little mechanic that is, if you have already maxed out that stacking unit and you have to bring in reinforcements and there's no other letters other than that one, basically those reinforcements don't have to come in that turn. And that plagued me in a couple of games where I had some pretty awesome reinforcements about to storm in, but the space itself had achieved its stacking limit. And so basically as the Allies, I had to get pounded by the Germans one more turn just so that I could bring in my reinforcements. So this is one of those games that the first game, you're really just trying to figure out how all the pieces work. And then every game after that, once you start getting the flow, once you start really thinking about your actions and really understanding what is happening every single turn and every single game, that's when you can really start to get good at this game. So why don't we take a good look at combat right now, and I will set up a situation on the map and then we will roll through it and we'll show you how that works as well. Okay, so we've set up a little battle here at the bottom of the map. We have an elite German armored unit storming into this particular space. We know it's elite because there is a red diamond there. And this space is defended by 3 allied units. There's no red diamonds on those units, so they're not elite. Okay? In this particular case, there are 2 armored allied units, and there is 1 infantry allied unit. And we know that space is controlled by the allies because there's not one of those sitting there. So that's where we start off. And so you take a peek at the strength in the lower left corner and we get a 6, which means you're going to start with 6 dice. And then there's a little plus there, which means because that armor unit is so good, they get an additional dice. And then at that point, you will start applying all these additional modifiers, which will add or remove dice to get you to your final roll. So for example, in clear terrain, the defenders have a 0 there, right? So the attacker doesn't have to remove. The attacker can see right where they are. And then if you look at the play aid or in the rule book, there's a wide variety of conditions which will allow you to add or remove dice. And so I'll give you some examples. So for example, if this was during one of the initial 3 German free moves in the beginning of the game, they would get a bonus die. If it was after the 23rd and it was the Allies attacking, they have the force of all of their power starting to build up, they would get an additional die. If I go through all of them right now, just to kind of give you an idea, just to kind of speed this along, the only real modifiers we're going to get on this one are the defender does include armor, so I'm going to have to take 1 away from the attacker, but the defender is also in clear terrain, so the attacker is going to get an additional die. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to roll these dice and we're going to see where we ended up. So because the red diamond has a 5 in it, anything that is a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 is a hit, is considered a hit. So there's a 5 that's a hit. So it looks like that German armored unit scored 1 hit. So now let's move it over to the Allies side. So we're going to make 3 rolls for the Allies. We are going to make 1 roll for this armored unit, so it starts with 2 dice, right? Again, clear terrain. When I look at the defender, does the attacker include armor? Yes, so I have to take 1 away. Are we in clear terrain? Yes, so we get to add 1 back in. And then, did attacking units enter this space by a river? Well, sure, they sure did. So there you go. So I'm going to go ahead and roll this. And anything that is a 1, 2, 3, or 4, so it looks like they score 1 hit. We're going to do the exact same sequence for this unit. Starts with 1 die. Same modifiers are basically going to happen. Is the attacker an armor? Yes, -1. Clear terrain, +1. Crossing a river, right? So the defenders here are beating the snot out of that attacking German armor unit as they're trying to cross the river. So they have to get a 1, 2, or 3. They did not, so no hit. And we'll do the same thing there. 2, same modifiers are going to add an additional 1 there. They have to get a 1, 2, 3, or 4, so they got 2 hits. So where do we end up? We end up the Germans scored 1 hit on the Allies, and the Allies scored 3 hits on the German. So here we're going to get a chance to take a look at how these counters work. So we're going to score the 3 hits on the German unit. So it starts with the, the 6, if you notice there. So the first hit is a flip. The second hit drops it to that counter, and the third hit flips it yet again. So basically, this particular action that occurred in this spot reduced the power of that attacking German armored unit by half. So now let's apply the hits on the Allies. So the Allies, right, they got 1 hit scored on them. And so there's a wide variety of choices as to how, the ally wants to take that hit. They could score it here, and if I flip them over, whoop, that means that infantry unit got wiped off the map, right? Or I could take one of these armored units and flip it, reducing that, still keeping 3 units there. And you say, well, why would you want to do that? Well, there is the ability to, reinforce and to, through the battle. So removing unit may be a good idea or it may not be a good idea, but that's the Allies' choice there. And so at the end of the turn, that's where we end up sitting. We have now where the Germans definitely had more firepower storming into that space, crossing the river and taking on 3 different units, potentially hitting from 3 different directions or whatever, however your mind wants to imagine it. Man, they got smacked. And so at this particular space, there they are. Now there are some retreat rules in here you can do. Instead of taking a hit, you can retreat. You could remove a hit by retreating out of a space. You can do things like that. But overall, that's how it would work. If we had run the battle in this particular space right here, there's an artillery unit there. Would have given the Germans a little bit more advantage. Maybe they didn't want to come to this space and fight after all. So gives you kind of an idea of the battle. So let me move on and expand the map out, and there's a couple other cool little rules I just want to show you, and then we will move on to my final thoughts. Okay, so just a couple of quick other things just to show you that are very elegant parts of this game design. We've talked a little bit about, you've seen how the dice roll, right? That you start with core dice, and then based on various circumstances of being the attacker, the defender terrain, it's going to add dice, remove dice, giving you a final number which you'll roll. It's abstract but simple, a very, very, very well done. Kind of takes an aggregate of all of those factors into your die roll and into your combat. I love this track across the top. Every single day is different. Different events are happening. Different victory conditions happen. There is a turn, on December 18th, German commandos can strike, right? They get to do that, and they can score some hits. You will see that there are German supply problems that occur, right? Or there are fuel shortages which will happen, and fuel shortages are handled really cool in the game. The Allies basically pick up one of these 3 fuel shortage markers, and they put them on any units that they want to. And basically, at that point, the German player can decide, I'm going to take away 2 of them, which is the one that's going to hurt me the least. Since I'm about to do an attack into this space, I'm going to take this one off, and this one as well. Right? So they get to choose, but this unit, they're basically frozen there. And then later in the game, when it happens and the fuel shortages get even more profound, the German can only take away 1 of those. I really like that mechanic. It really takes what could be a very complicated, exception-based rule and just has a simple, elegant mechanic which handles it. I love how you can very quickly and easily see the activation in the beginning of a day. Boom, all your units are back alive and you can start making the tactical choices. I think it is a beautiful map. I love the how you can score the hits as you're rolling them, and then in the end of the game, at the end of the combat, you resolve them and you just basically count them back down to 0. Every single corner of this game is built to make this as streamlined as possible. And whether it's the reinforcement rules coming in multiple locations, whether it is everybody gets alternating turns, how they do the damage, and it makes its way, as we showed, starts with strong replacement counters out there. It is just a truly elegant design. So I'm about to move into my final thoughts here, but I don't think I'm gonna surprise you. I think this game is a phenomenally successful design. So let's move into those final thoughts, and we'll have you on your way. Okay, everybody, so here we are back for my final thoughts on the Battle of the Bulge, World War II Commander Volume 1. I simply adore this game. I think this game is amazing. If you couldn't tell from my intro and from my overview, it is, I think, one of the best well-designed overall packages when it comes to war games. When you have a game out there like Memoir 44, that is definitely a gateway game to the wargame genre. And it's a game that it can be enjoyed by both wargamers and board gamers. And there's a selection of that audience that is going to, when they get done playing Memoir 44, think, I know there's this whole wargaming wing of the hobby. Maybe that's something I would be interested in. And their next game should not be World in Flames, right? Their next game needs to be the next level up in complexity, and that is this game. And this game has everything. It has the move, it has, the wargamey counters, it has the move them around the map, it's got the dice rolling, it also has events that are mapping to history that really bring out and make the Battle of the Bulge alive. I had some very tense moments where I was battling it out, or I was racing the 101st Infantry across the map to get them into the fray just to stop the German onslaught. There were parts of the board where all of our units just kind of slammed into each other, and every turn kept boom, 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 pounding each other, and I had no idea if my units were even going to be able to hold for reinforcements. And there was one time right here where reinforcements were supposed to come in here, and I couldn't get them in there because I had too many units in there. So what do? Do I pull some units back? I did not want to lose control of the town. I was worth 2 victory points. So, if you heard the excitement in my voice there, that is this game. This is the game that after Memoir 44, you want to lure potential wargamers into our hobby. This is the next game. This is the one that gives them everything that a war game should have. Of course, there's a level of abstraction. This is not a high complexity war game, but that's almost what makes it perfect. How often can you say you sat down and fought an extremely exciting and engaging Battle of the Bulge in 2 to 3 hours? You simply can't. So what are the reasons why this is so good? Let's talk about that. The first is the rulebook. This is a phenomenal rulebook. If there is a continual flaw that I see in the wargaming industry, it is wargaming rulebooks. So I used to be a developer, and I used to code. And when I would have to adjust somebody else's code, this is what would happen. The code would either be very well done, very well laid out with remarks and comments and explainable, and I could jump in there and go boom, 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 and make that adjustment, and the code would be good. Or the previous developer was really impressed with their brain and their own ability, and they would design this puzzle box that I would spend hours just trying to understand what the heck that they were doing. Was it the most efficient way that they did it? Probably, maybe, I don't know, but I do know that the other code would take me an hour to adjust, where this code might take me several hours. And so one of them had me cursing, and one of them had me moving on and being productive. And so when it comes to war games, sometimes they are so complex that you need help. Otherwise, it stops becoming fun and it starts becoming work. Now, I may have just identified myself as not as one of the old school grog nerds, but I'm sorry, I'm a busy guy. I have 2 kids, I have a career, I have a wife, I have things I need to accomplish in my life, and when I sit down to play in an afternoon, I want to make sure that I am having fun the entire time. Of course, in war games, you're going to have to look some things up in the rule book. But sometimes people have a 5 or 6 page rule book when they should have a 26 page rule book because it's not laid out and it doesn't have examples. This game, sorry about that rant, but this game is not that. This rule book is awesome. I was able to sit down before when I opened this box and read through this and have a general idea of how to play. On top of that, I gave it one more read through, and then it was my constant companion through that first play. But I want to say I stopped actually looking at it, other than to make sure I was doing something right. By the second half of the game. Everything else is on these cards. They've got the sequence of play laid out right there. They've got the modifiers to the dice rolls right there. Towards the end, I was only looking up things like replacements and reinforcements and how did they work. And those are so easy, they clicked into my head and fine. So, you know, Mr. Butterfield and Compass Games did a fantastic job with this rule book. It's really good. And I'm convinced that this rule book is one of the reasons why this game is so good. And then let's talk about the counters. The counters themselves, they're larger counters. They're really high quality counters. They have everything on it that you want. They have all of the information. They tell you what the counter is, what its starting position is, what day it comes in as a reinforcement, what area of the map it comes in, all of its battle values in one spot. And then that tied with this order of battle here that you see here, where you organize all of the counters are laid out. It's really easy to, as they're taking damage, swap out the right counter with. It just is a slick and elegant system. So the counters and these orders of battle are awesome. And then the game board. It's not the most beautiful game board, but it is probably one of the most functional game boards I've seen in a war game. It literally has almost everything that I need. Up here in the corner, it's got the terrain key. It has, you know, everything across the top here that talks about each day. Anyone can just quickly look down and know it's the 21st and here's what's happening on the next day. So you can be looking at the days ahead and you could be planning. It has modifiers built into the different regions. These little to-hit tracks that you see here. It's all of the little things that they did, whether it is the rule book, the order of battle, this great board. It just all comes together. You know, when I rate games, I never say a game is good or bad, because this is just my opinion, right? And you're watching this because you want to know my opinion. When I give a rating, I usually say a game is okay. I usually say a game is good. I may say a game is great. Once in a while, I'm going to say a game is awesome. And then once in a while, you have a game that closes in on perfection. And the way this game all comes together, I love this game. I think this is in the upper end of awesome. It's definitely got some abstraction level that some hardcore gamers may not want. But this game will hit my table 3 or 4 times more than a more complex game, because I can fight the Battle of the Bulge in 2 hours and have memories that I'm thinking about weeks later. And that is a testament to the game too. And it does get me really excited to play John Butterfield's other game, Enemy Action Ardennes, because if he did this game so well, I can only imagine what the more complex rule set looks like in his hands as well. The only other thing I do want to point out is this box. So Compass Games, you know, traditionally has okay boxes. They're the kind of average game box, war game box that you've seen for the last few decades. Not very often is there anything too special about them. I would give them an okay. This is a really good box. It is like the best box of any Compass game that I have bought. From the finish to the sturdiness, I don't know why they did this different. I don't know if that's because of the Kickstarter, but I just want to give some positive kudos to Compass Games that I would love it if all of your games were in boxes like this. And if not, get as many of them as you can, because it's sturdy and it's just a beautiful game box, and I'm a nerd about stuff like that. So there you have it, Battle of the Bulge, the World War II Commander Series, Volume 1. There's a couple more coming down the road in this series, as I understand it, at least one. So when I hear what that game is, it will be on my list instantly to pick up, because this game is that good and I want to see other permutations of it. So thank you very much for listening to this much longer video and all of my gushing over this title. Go out there, get yourself a copy of Battle of the Bulge. You will not regret it. Have a good day, and don't forget to get lost in games.